And we are live for Guild of Ficon. Another day, another panel. Welcome.
You sound so excited about that.
I've been battling a headache today, so I was like, maybe this panel just won't happen.
Don't worry, I'm sure we'll make it worse.
Or better. It could make it better. So, anyways, we are here for the panel titled "We All Chose the Same Class," and so this is going to be about writing MCs and why so many of them have a similar class and how to relate. So, welcome everyone. My name is Jen. I am the moderator for this panel today. Sorry, excuse me. And joining me today are some amazing people, and we will get into introductions in just a second. I just wanted to just let you guys know that we are using StreamYards. And so if you haven't already linked your Facebook, if this is your very first stream or panel that you are joining us for, please go ahead and link your Facebook to the StreamYard so then we can see your lovely name when it pops up instead of just saying Facebook user. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't do that because my phone does that to me. So, and then anything else, we do have a Discord. So you can, if I don't get into all of your questions today, feel free to post them in the Discord after the panel, and we will the panelists will get to the can answer those there. So, keeping myself from talking, I'm going to start having everyone do their introduction. Feel free to drop questions now in the chat, so that by the time introductions are all done, we can answer questions and get words. Get started. I'm going to go to JM Clark and just go ahead, introduce yourself and any like a writer at what do you do and what do you what series or anything like that. So go ahead, JM.
Of course. So my name is J.M. Clark. I am the author of two series. One is Mark of the Fool, which has been I don't want to call it my veteran series at this point. I've been writing it for about 2 years on Royal Road and publishing it for about a year on Amazon. And then we have the baby of the group, a series I'm very excited about, Rune Seeker, which dropped on Amazon just last week. So now I am 2 for 2 on Amazon at the moment. But yes, that's me.
Jacob?
My name is Jacob Tanner. I'm the author of 3 lit RPG and progression fantasy series. Arcane Kingdom Online was my first series. Tower Climber was my second series. And now I'm currently working on my third series, Second Chance Swordsman. And just want to say hi to everyone and thank you guys for being here.
And David.
Hi, I'm David Petrie. I write the Necrotic Apocalypse series, which stars a necromancer, which pretty much everybody has written at this point, right?
I have.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my credentials there. I also write the Pixel Dust series, which was my first one, but I'm working on book 6 now of my zombie stuff. So yeah, that's it.
Okay. And we do have a few fans in the chat, of course, talking about how different. Okay, apparently I am not talking today. These words are just not going to happen. Talking about different books already. So, I got a question from Sharon. We're going to go straight into these questions. Why do you think there are so many flavors of wizard and not other classes? I know we just talked about necromancers, but
I feel like an offshoot of the wizard, because what I see more often than wizard is like sort of the spell sword, which is sort of the wizard melee class hybrid. And I think the reason we see that so often is so much of lit RPG, not all of it, but a lot of it is so combat and fighting focused. And authors, you want to have a character who's versatile, has a versatile move set or ability set, so you can have different diverse types of fights and battles. And so I think the most obvious move is then to have a guy who can fight with a sword but also has magical powers. And so I think that's why we see a lot of wizards. But then an offshoot of that is you might see a lot of wizards, because if you're just doing plain wizards, they're quite crunchy. So there's a lot of theory crafting that you can have going with a wizard character. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that's it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'd actually go a little farther back. If you look at the wizard might be the most iconic magical user in all of the fantasy genre, from like Tolkien on. And of course, when this got gamified by way of Dungeons and Dragons, the wizard was the first one through the gate. I think cleric came in a little bit afterward, but my history might be a little off on that one. So the wizard is basically the grandfather of all magic classes, and I think it just captures the imagination. The influences are huge. We've got Gandalf, we've got Harry Potter, we've got Harry Dresden. Wizards are everywhere. So I think it just works as very much as a base class for so many people to go with. And I agree, Jacob. Spell swords are incredibly common. I think I read a statistic that in Elder Scrolls Online, like 90% of people in their first character made like human spell swords. Just like 90% of the user base was that for a while. So it's the most basic class. It gives you your magic, it gives you your ability to fight. It's got the variety as you spoke of. So I think those things combined together makes it one of the most common archetypes in lit RPG and fantasy in general.
And I'd probably add just one tiny step. I enjoy it because Jacob kind of started, and then we went to JM, and then we go right to a third thing is that, because you talk about how wizards are kind of like the granddaddy of all magic users. I think that in a lot of the kind of media that we have seen from before, you've got the wizard is kind of like it's the big powerful one, but it's not usually the main character a lot of the time, because you're like Gandalf and things like that. You've got Harry Potter, where obviously Harry's a wizard, but the what's his name, Dumbledore is like the wizard, that's what you imagine. And with lit RPG, because there's pretty much not all lit RPG, but most of it, the character starts out as like a new player or a new Portal fantasy person, whatever. You get to see like the wizard starting from scratch, and I think that's probably something that's kind of appealing.
I think it's also easier to just say magic in general. It would be more of a wizard like skill set or something like that. So like even magic based users, you may not be saying that they're a wizard, but that is also a lot of traits of that. So it's easier to just kind of put that in your head. You're a wizard, Harry.
Yeah.
I had to. Like it was living on without rent in my head. So Sharon is also had another question, which I also had in my head as well. What underrepresented class would you consider writing as a character in the future? And I'm gonna start with JM again.
Actually, I think we started with Jacob. But
I started with you at the very beginning. Okay?
Oh yes, I see what you're saying. Alrighty. I think, truthfully, I would either like to do cleric or druid. You see the odd druid here and there. I mean, there's the Iron Druid series, though that's not lit RPG. But and there's reasons I'm thinking of later on that I can get into, but clerics I find are incredibly rare in lit RPG. Like, I think I've maybe run into one once, like maybe the odd paladin here and there, but like, yeah, cleric is just incredibly rare, and I think it would be quite the interesting challenge. I'd like to take one on in another series down the road, but we will see. Yeah,
Sharon actually touched base. Axe Druid is a druid-based series, and then there is also a cleric. It's a spin-off of Viridian Gate. The Heartfire series, I believe it is. Emily Godhand. Yep. Yeah. So those two both have it, but you're right. Like, those are the only two that I can think of. I mean, there's a few more. There's a few, but are those actually just healers, or are they clerics, or are they some other type of healer? I don't know all of the books, of course. But I'm gonna go to David. Do you have
Um,
any underrepresented
Yeah, I
classes?
go. Well, first of all, I will comment on the healer because my first series does one of the main characters is a pure healer, which basically has zero combat capability whatsoever. And so I've always been a big fan of the healers in general. That's what I used to play in a lot of online games. So that's where my love of it comes from. But I think I'd like to write like a berserker type character. Which is kind of the polar opposite of that. But I think that's something that we don't see a lot of. That's just pure, like no magic, just pure damage. I feel like that would be an interesting story. You could do a lot with it.
And Jacob.
Yeah, no, just to echo what everyone else is saying, I think healer would be really cool. I'd like to see, because I know I'm not too deep into Azarinth healer, because I know it's called that, but it felt like she had like this combat class very early on and just was kicking butt. But I've not read too deep into the series, so I could be totally wrong. Who else would I'd want to see? I think healing would be cool. Non-combat stuff, something utility wise. I know that's been done before. But stuff that just allows for more versatile types of storytelling and different types of fights and more strategy. So just anything that just has a lot of like, I don't know, not quite crunch, but improvisational ability. So I know I wrote one, but I know it's becoming more and more popular. A character with like a scene, like a spell stealing kind of ability. So that allows you to then use multiple spells abilities, whether they're damage or magic or whatever. And I think that adds a lot of exciting stuff. My original answer I was going to say was I was going to say ninja, but then I remembered Dodge Tank, an older lit RPG book by Rick Scott. He did ninja and he did it very, very well with a very sort of Final Fantasy 11 inspired system. Yeah, so that's just like a bunch of classes that I'd like to see. Please, everyone, go write them now for me to read and enjoy.
Anyways, get on that writing, people. Sorry, it's just always seeing the comments about things about like, why aren't you writing this? It's like, why not? Like, why can't you write it? So, I'm gonna go. Hi, KT. You should be editing, but that's okay. Please come join us. Ask questions. Maybe she'll be the one who starts to write the next one. Okay. I'm going to go to Kyle's question. So, what is your favorite class to write, and what aspects of it intrigues you enough to have it be your main focus? And the person who I haven't started with yet is David.
Oh, geez. You could just never start with me. I'd appreciate that.
Okay, fine.
There's less pressure that way. But I think, I don't know, I really do enjoy writing like a healer type class, only because the non-combat element, one thing that I always feel in lit RPG I don't get a lot of is I think lit RPG is so much like individual focused, and it's not really it's not party based a lot of time. There's been a few really good books that were more party based, but it's just rare. And I really like the dynamic between players or characters or whatever. And I think that with something like a healer, like you don't have a choice at that point where everybody has to fill a role and it has to work off teamwork, and it changes the entire dynamic of fights. So that's always been super interesting to me. The other thing that, I didn't think I would enjoy writing a necromancer as much as I do. I think what's really interesting about that is, or this is true of lit RPG in general, is that because the systems are very rule based and all the abilities have very definitive limits, and this is what they do and this is what they don't do. I think it stops what I like thinking of as like pew pew magic. Where like if you ever watch something like Harry Potter where we just like throw spells everywhere and you don't know what they're doing, they're just shooting light at each other, I think that in lit RPG and things like necromancy and stuff like that, everything they do relates to their class and how they're fighting. And so like when they want to do an attack, it's not just one attack a lot of times. It can be 3 different things all going at once in order to combine into an attack. I think that's super interesting. Oh, that's it.
Jacob?
The question was, what is the favorite class to write?
Well, our person behind the scenes got rid of it. What is your favorite class to write, and what aspects of it intrigue you?
Yeah, so I'll say I really liked. I brought it up already, but like the spell stealing ability of Max, the main character in Tower Climber, was really fun to write because it just meant you were constantly, especially if there was like a lot of fighting in my books, which there is, and lots of battles. Every battle is sort of an interesting sort of puzzle because you come across someone with an interesting ability, and now your main character is capable of using that power. Now they have to think, okay, how do I use this power in such a way that I can outsmart and beat out the guy whose power this is all the time? So that was really enjoyable, and I don't know, just allowed for just more like diversity in just like terms of like what you could do in fight scenes and stuff. So I really like that. And then in my newest series, Second Chance Swordsman, I'm actually, to what David was saying earlier, I am writing a sort of berserker barbarian style character. I was kind of inspired by the Reaver class from Dragon Age 3. I'm forgetting the subtitle of that one now. But Inquisition, Dragon Age 3 Inquisition. And yeah, basically I really like that because it's like kind of like a risk reward. Like you have to take damage to deal damage kind of vibe. And so that adds always like a ticking clock of intensity because you're like, your character's taking all this damage, maybe risking their life, but then it's dealing monstrous damage back. And that's just kind of satisfying to write and think about and read and play. And so that's what I enjoy.
Okay. And Jam.
Alrighty. So I am going to cheat. There are 2 that I actually prefer. The first one, it would actually be a summoner character, which I blame on the game Summoner, which I played back in the 90s because I am ancient. But the one thing I love about summoner characters is, as a GM, you get to play with the whole monster manual when you're running a game of Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or something like that. And summoners are the closest thing you can get to as a player for turning the monsters that you find out into the wilderness into your toy box, essentially. So they're very difficult to write, I find, because oftentimes you have to communicate that the character is being active and not just the pet. But at the same time, like one of my favorite little RPGs, a Korean novel by the name of Taming Master, actually managed to get that done pretty well because the summoner himself specialized in archery, while his summons were the tanks in the front line and stuff like that. It's really badass fight scenes. So that's something I'd like to delve into in the future. But my bread and butter, which is going to sound weird coming from the guy that writes Mark of the Fool, has always been the big, smashy fighter barbarian types, which I blame on too many Arnold Schwarzenegger movies as a kid. But like, give me a whole bunch of passive abilities to stack up my damage reduction, my hit points, and my crazy damage, and let me just rip things apart. That's something I really want to get back into in my next series, probably after Mark of the Fool and Runeseeker. It's just, I find it viscerally satisfying. So that's something that I can't wait to get into again. So yeah, I'm with you, David. Give me some berserkers.
I'm going to agreed. Berserker it is now. All right. So going on, we've got a question from a Facebook user, because they could be anyone. As far as an MC go, how dark is dark? I don't see a lot of really dark MCs. I think that there has been a few, but I will definitely put this out to you guys to answer. And you know what? Let's go with Jacob.
Okay, yeah, Yeah, Dark MC. Yeah, I know there's people who write it. It's tough, and I think it's like, unless yeah, it's a hard. Yeah, I think it's like actually boils down to one of like the fundamental tensions that one needs to grapple with when writing lit RPG. Because if you are in a video game world or like similar world where you're killing stuff to level up, the morality and ethics of killing come up, and how do you deal with that? And so there's a lot of space for lit RPG to get really dark, but then I think at the same time, so much of the genre is also power fantasy and wish fulfillment. And so how do you, I don't know, it seems like, if someone's killing and then grappling with the trauma of killing, it gets, I don't know, it becomes like a conundrum, where, when they're mostly trying to be fun books.
It's hard to put it's hard to not put a redeeming factor in there so that the reader can still stay engaged.
Yeah, exactly. And so either you have to make the bad guys really bad, or they can be like unthinking demon spawn that, you're like, okay, well, we don't care, kind of like zombies are like low calorie kills, just so yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by dark, right? Like all of my MCs are violence, all of my MCs have guilds, so yeah, I don't know. But I know it can go a lot further. I guess, yeah, I don't write the particularly real twisted MC, so maybe that's why I'm struggling with this question. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that's where I'm at. Perplexed.
Jan. Oh, yeah. Perplexed. There you go. That's word of the day. Jan.
I think that's a bit of a complex question. In the end, people that read dark MCs tend to be looking for something different in their experience with fiction than, say, someone going to pick up a Superman comic, or something fun like He Who Fights with Monsters or something like that. But it's one of those things where I think when it goes for too dark, if you want a sort of basic answer, it's, I think, when your main character stops being able to be either like a cool experience someone can live out or someone can watch, or when it's someone that's relatable. So if you're reading this character and they're leveling up, they're grinding, they're battling, and it just feels bad, like you're like, okay, well, I'm not really having fun in this, because most of the time people read lit RPG books and a lot of books in similar genres for fun, and if you're not having fun, then I think something has gone wrong with the experience, if you're going for that in any case. So I think that might be sort of like the idea of where things might be too dark, but I think there's room for anyone to express themselves. Like, I'd love to see like more characters like Guts just be in lit RPG and in progression fantasy, and Ainz Al Ghul, who from Overlord, which is a weirdly dark series at times, and he's just an evil lich. Like, you can go that sort of dark as well. So I think you can. It all depends. It all depends on who you want to be reading your book and what kind of experience you want them to have. That's kind of a cop-out answer, but that's what I'm sticking with.
No, and you're fine. And people have been saying in the chat that it's a niche thing. Like, people do anti-heroes, but to have like maybe a dark or even evil MC, it's niche. David, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah. Generally, I think that people, exactly what you were saying, is that people do like fun, and it's hard to really do fun with that. I mean, I do write a main character that eats people on a fairly regular basis, but still, in a fun way.
He has fun.
In a fun way, he's a terrible guy, but he's lovable in his own way. But so there's that. But I think that I've never been drawn to kind of evil MCs, just because of it's hard to connect with them, and it's hard to get to a point where you care about them. I think when you start building an emotional connection with the evil MC, you might have a problem with your issues. But I think there is still room for something like, because we haven't really seen much of anything like your Walter Whites or your like, I don't know if you've seen the show Barry or whatever. These are characters that are terrible people and bad guys that you want to be caught. You like, they need to pay for it, but you still really enjoy watching them do their thing. And I think there is room for that in the genre. It's just not something we've seen a lot of. I think it's probably really hard to do.
I mean, I do wonder, is that where He Who Fights with Monsters is ultimately going? I'm not super deep. I've only read the first 2 books, so I know they're at 10. They're book 10, so I'm far behind. But, you know, and based on that title is the quote of a Nietzsche quote about staring into the abyss. I don't know. I could see that, you know, being where it's going. You know, no spoilers. That's my prediction. You know, come back 2023. Just a question for everyone here. I mean, how often do you play the evil character in a video game? I mean, maybe you guys do it. I feel awful if I have to do the bad thing. I go back.
When you pick the mean dialogue choice and you cry about it.
Yeah, no, I don't like it.
Bro.
Maybe I'm just a softie.
I've tried so many times, bro. Like I will pick the mean dialogue option because I'm like, I want to see where this goes, and then within about 5 minutes, I'm reloading my save. I can never stick the landing on that one.
Yeah.
I will say is that when we're talking about all of this and listening to things, it made me think of, there is an author who has talked about it before, is that he wrote his book, or wrote majority of the book, and the person was a paladin, but then he scrapped it because it just wasn't working, and the main character became a complete asshole. And he's like, I couldn't have imagined it any other way. So the way that you guys are saying it this way, and then you redo your save, makes me chuckle to think that there are people who wrote possibly like a more of a better person and then decided to go the asshole route. Not saying that was the MC was definitely an asshole. Yeah, no, there's no way around that one. But yeah, so it's hard to answer that question. It's hard to go dark and to stay dark. People can start dark, but then they get a redeeming factor. Or they get they're able to make themselves a better person, and the reader can relate. I know that's also been said in previous panels that escapism. Nobody really wants to read super dark and not be able to escape to like a better thing. All right, I'm gonna stop talking because this isn't me. So
there's no escape, man. That's
apparently not. All right, going on to Ryan's question. Since many of the traditional D&D style classes have been done, how much work do you think it is to come up with something completely unique for a class? And I can't remember who I started with, so I'm just going to go to JM.
Alrighty. Well, it can be quite a bit of work. For Runeseeker, we base some of it off of WoW. And Carter really he's my co-writer for that series. He got a lot into the system for it, and he basically broke out a lot of the D&D sort of archetypes in order to do something completely different, which was just something I really enjoyed about that series. But in general, I find that it can be difficult just because I've played so much D&D that when it comes to gaming, that's almost how I think. It's sort of like one of those things where, I saw a comment, I think it was on r/Progression Fantasy about, your DPS, your tank, your healer, and how that doesn't really make sense outside of like a specific MMO context type of thing when towards a party composition. But like we keep going back to that instead of like more realistic teams that depend on the world that the stories taking place in. And I think it's just because we've all been so trained to think in those archetypes that you almost have to reprogram yourself to go outside of that. So I think it's difficult. It is a difficult thing, even though Carter and I did it once already, I guess. But it wasn't easy. wasn't easy. So that's me.
Okay. David?
I mean, I haven't done anything that's super unique in that regard, like where I've broken a lot of molds on that. But I would assume that it is relatively challenging because you kind of come up with a whole new class system, abilities, everything. I mean, you're doing everything from the ground up, so it's going to be a challenge. It's definitely worthwhile doing. I think it could produce very interesting results, but I haven't done it.
And Jacob, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the direction that a lot of cozy fantasy and stuff like Wandering In, I think they're going in interesting directions and leaving combat classes altogether. So you have innkeeper classes, or baristas, or whatever you can think of, or there's like now a vending machine one on Royal Road I've been seeing the cover for, and so yeah, I think there's interesting places you can go when you leave the realm of combat. And yeah, just so that's kind of what I'd like to see. Maybe I think that could be cool. And just to jump on the point about the healer DPS tank combo. Yeah, I don't think it works entirely in lit RPG and progression fantasy, because normally we're so focused on the main character and the main character's progression that normally, yeah, you're not focused on the team aspects really. Yeah, I don't know. But those are my thoughts.
So,
I realize all of my answers end with me going,
no, the person, I don't usually do this, but the person who asked the question, you just totally highlighted their Royal Road book.
Oh, did I? Oh,
you did. Which is
I'm
why it was the vending machines. It's Ryan's.
Oh, Ryan. Oh, thank you. Oh, Ryan, I'm sorry. I it's late at night where I am right now. So, excuse the faux pas. I shouted out your book half-heartedly, I guess. But yeah, it's a great.
Too late, Jacob. It's too late. No, I'm kidding.
Sorry, I have to go now, you guys. I'll see y'all later.
It was just the fact that I was like, oh, Ryan's probably like fainted by now. Oh, I was like, oh wait, he just okay. Back to our regular scheduled panel.
Remember, there's no escape.
Not even for you, Jacob. You can't leave.
I know.
So I'm sorry. Like the things on the screen are. I was trying to look at something. I looked back. Shiny squirrel moment. It's okay. So I'm gonna skip to Sean's question because I feel like this is close to us. What do you feel? What do you think is more realistic than those archetypes? I'm trying to remember. Somebody else has probably mentioned it. So whoever can remember what he's actually talking about.
When I talked about,
You did, okay.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about that. So truthfully, the answer really depends on the world setting. If you are in a setting where, like, if you're in a setting where people aren't really able to develop actually, I'm going to go the opposite example. If you enter a setting where people, by way of the system or by way of cultivation, can end up developing super toughness or super endurance, the role of a tank sort of falls apart, because at that point, everyone can soak damage. It's one of those things then where, like, trying to force that in there, I find stops making a lot of sense. DPS, if you apply it to a real life example, let's say you have a system where most things tend to be squishy, especially at a certain level. Well, at that point, going for a strike first, and everyone going for a strike first, ask questions later, sort of class or build, tends to make a lot of sense as well. It's one of those things wherein, like, if you look at a lot of how battles occur in real life, fights and battles occur in occur in real life, often the person who throws the first most significant blow, unless someone is both opponents are well trained, tends to be the winner of the fight. So if you then apply that sort of logic to a system, design it around it, and there are some very gritty TTRPGs out there that try to replicate this, then going, okay, well, I'm going to go for a tank build doesn't really make that much sense either. Or if you even depart completely from a D&D sort of framework, for example, like 2nd edition Exalted, where Dex was absolute king, then saying, okay, well, tank characters with the heavy armor, the high hit points and stuff like that, with by way of a system design, which you could argue is good or not, they just tended to lose. So having that role exist in setting kind of falls apart. You need to completely rethink how parties are built and how they would function in that sort of setting. So when I say realistic, I more mean, how does your setting work? How does it interact with the system? And what sort of parties, what sort of groups, or what sort of builds which each character do in reaction to those circumstances? So that's basically what I meant by that.
Anyone else have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I think it just is like more interesting powers. Like, I guess those archetypes are like kind of, they'll always be kind of like core and you can maybe relate back to that. But I just think to something like the manga One Piece, and you got like a guy who can stretch, a guy who fights with 3 swords, a guy who cooks, like, and that's just fun, right? And so it's just, adding cool powers and seeing how they combine together and how people work together, and that can make, so it's like, yeah, just let's make more cool powers, you guys.
David?
I'd probably just say more realistic elements would be just more kind of team-based things. Just because in a world where, the setting does matter, obviously, but like in a world where one guy can do it all, then it kind of renders a lot of other stuff kind of moot, So, granted, a lot of liturgy is like one guy getting a advantage over another, but even that can be just a world-breaking thing. So it's all very strange, but like I feel like to get more realistic, just having something is more based on people that don't have necessarily an advantage, but just are excelling due to their kind of tactics and cooperation.
Sorry, I need to apologize. I totally missed the realistic part. I just thought, like, how do we move away from those archetypes was the question. Sorry. To answer how to make it more realistic, I don't know. I realized I dodged the question before, but that was by accident, and now I just want to admit that I don't have the answer.
We appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So, seeing a couple of comments, and there is a question that was asked earlier and just hadn't gotten to it yet. So we're talking about. Okay. Oh, yeah. So JD also talked about it too. Was that saying that there have been digging how that there's been dual classing from the authors, and there was a question about multi-classing isn't something that we see too often. Why do you think that is and not utilized more in the genre? So I feel like it might be starting to come around, but it's still not there just yet. I'm going to start with David.
I don't really have a reason why I think it's not done very much, because it does seems like something that should be done more. I don't know why. That's my answer. I got nothing more than that.
Okay. Jacob?
Yes, I'd already mentioned it earlier, but I think off the top of my head, Dodge Tank by Rick Scott was a really good example of doing the multi-classing stuff, very much based on like a Final Fantasy 11 kind of Final Fantasy 14 style system where you can level up different classes, and then if you get like one class to a certain level and then another class to a certain level, you can then unlock whole new subclasses and stuff like this. Very much like also like Final Fantasy Tactics did that a little bit with like the job system. So that's like the example that comes top of mind that I thought was really cool, that does that. But yeah, I don't know why people don't do it more often. I guess because to do it, you're creating like a very complicated system. It seems like, from the get go, and then yeah, and then I guess, and then maybe does it make it harder to feel like, as a reader, like a surrogate with the character? I don't know. This is just me speculating out loud, right? Like if someone, their class and you're seeing how that class grows, and that's really exciting. When you add a multi-class element, does it then sort of like split the progression dopamine hit across 3 different things? And then unless they're all weaved together really well, it could be maybe a bit tedious. I don't know. I'm just speculating out loud.
You're good. JM, do you have anything to add?
Yes. I'm thinking oftentimes when you see multiclassing, the way it's used in just games where it comes up, it's to often dip into another class's playground and gain their abilities, which, ironically enough, I think is very common in lit RPG, just done in a different way. The spell sword. There's almost always a
Did we lose him?
oh, are you here?
Oh,
You're back.
you're
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Yes, but yes, I was going to say that there's almost always a spell sword class, and if you look at it from a classical D&D understanding, that in itself is a multi-class in and of itself. And I think with that being so common, just going for sword and magic as a base, or melee combat and magic as a base, there's not really much more room for things to explore by way of a multi-class, at least in a way a lot of systems are designed. So it almost is already taken care of, which is why I think a lot of people avoid it, because then it sort of adds unnecessary complications and you're not really getting much more out of it. So, but if someone was like, okay, this system, there's no spell sword, just period, then I think you'd see it a lot more. That's my opinion.
And we did get apparently this is also some of the people in the chat are answering as well. So I mean, this is engaging and it works out well. So we did see people saying, like Sean said, that it's not necessarily called dual classing or multi-classing anymore as well. Like people just do it. Stuart also did mention like the differences of where the multi-classing can be found in different pieces. And then also I do know that I've seen it happen in books. The thing is that though, like Kaylin said, it's a subclass. I feel like it almost gets dropped. One of them might get dropped and the other one just stays in the focus. And it's hard, like when you're starting to like do a lot of things and you just got to keep track of everything. So sorry, I digress. We got a few more questions. We do have a little over 15 minutes left for today. So if you guys have any last minute questions, feel free to ask them. If I don't get to them, feel free to drop them in the Discord. Panelists will be there afterwards. They can answer questions that didn't get answered here. And we'll probably get about 10 more minutes before I'll do the final wrap up. So going with a question from Sharon. How do you keep common class characters fresh and interesting? So now that we've gone from unique and everything, now we're going back to the common class question. And JM, I'll start with you.
I think it's a question of how you use the abilities you're granted. Like, I kind of go back to something like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where everyone gets a stand, and the stands usually have 1, maybe 2 abilities if they're busted. And the entire story, every fight, is about how to use your one ability in the most effective, busted way possible to fight a new opponent that you've never seen before. And I think that element of strategy is how to keep common classes fresh. Like, okay, cool, like you've got a tank and it draws people's attention with a shout ability or something like that, but how do you utilize it differently in new situations? How do you break it? How do enemies adapt to it? That sort of thing. I think that's how you keep things fresh, by not necessarily looking at new abilities, but looking at how they haven't been used before and what sort of opponents could challenge them in new ways. So that's the way I look at it.
David?
I mean, I feel like the answer to this is pretty simple. Like system and abilities is all great and everything, but when it comes down to character, it's character that matters. To keep it fresh and interesting, just write a good character. Write something that's unique. Write a character that is engaging. That's something that's relatable. Something that's, give them a sense of humor. Just make a character that is one that people want to read, no matter how many times they've seen that class. Just do something new.
Yeah, and Jacob.
Yeah, I like what everyone else has said. J.M. Clark, I like that JoJo shout out.
Yeah.
David Petrie, I like, we need to write really good characters. Yeah, so how would I use a common class?
Or how do you keep it fresh and interesting?
Yes. Thank you. And yeah, I think maybe really keeping close to a single ability, or I think this would be an opportunity where realism could be used to a really cool effect. There's loads of spell swords, there's loads of sword fights, but how much are you talking about sword stances and like really getting into the technical details of that kind of thing? And that could lead to really interesting stuff. Same with a healer class and really getting into biology and medicine. So those are my thoughts.
Okay. Did I miss anyone?
No.
So, there was a lot going on in the.
Yeah, I see. There's a big chunky.
Yeah, and I think that's the one I'm going to go with from Lewis, I believe it is. I have found that class is usually determined by 4 factors: actions, intentions, achievements, like the history of the MC, and external factors like fate or destiny or etc. Which do you guys feel is the most important to you, or is there another that you feel is more influential to your class? This is a really good question. I don't know who to start with. Jacob.
It's a hard question.
I know.
Okay. I found the classes are usually determined by 4 factors. I'm just reading it again. Actions, intentions. Yeah, I mean, I think I like intentions. I like a long off goal, and how is that going to govern your path forward? So I'm thinking anime, Naruto, he wants to become Hokage. What does he got to do that? And that's how he sets forward. And we know he's got this big goal. Hunter x Hunter, Gon is looking for his dad. One Piece, they're looking for the One Piece. So I kind of like intentions would probably be the thing that I gravitate to the most towards. I know in my own series, in Tower Climber, Max from the very beginning is searching for his sister who's lost in the never-ending tower. And in my newest series, Second Chance Swordsman, Sam is working towards the goal of stopping this impending apocalypse that he's traveled back in time for. So I think that, to me, like in terms of character, intention is what matters most to me. And then, I think actions and achievement in terms of class would probably be where I would think, like the class will grow by the things that you do. And I think that's really good. I think maybe fate can play a little role early on in getting like an extra special, super cool class or something. But fate feels like the one that probably ultimately the least satisfying. And so you don't want too much fate playing a role. Maybe, I'm not sure. Those are my immediate thoughts thinking about this question, but it's a really good question. Thank you for asking.
David?
I like the opposite of fate. I think kind of where I like random. I like just, this is the situation that you're stuck with, and it's not because of your class, not because of your history, it's not because of anything else. It's just like, or you're not because of your fate. I like it to be just, what was the situation that got them into their whatever system that magic has become? Like, how did they get in it? How did that affect? How did they get what class they get? And then just, what do they do with it? So taking someone that doesn't necessarily have a connection with the class and then seeing what they then move forward with it and how they use it in interesting ways. Because I feel like when you've got people that it's like, oh, I chose necromancer because I like this and this is what whatever, and this is who I am. But then when you take like some like Digby is a medieval peasant and who just died one day, and so wrong place, wrong time, and seeing the random bullshit that he does with his class is kind of why I like just discovering these characters.
Ryan has a side question. Isn't it just the opposite of fate, luck?
I mean, luck. Yeah, I mean, I guess because it can be bad luck as well. Randomness is kind of what I think of it as, but yeah, luck could work.
Okay, and Jam.
For me, I tend to like two different pathways. Well, like, okay, if it comes to like choosing a character class, it's sort of like, okay, what do I feel would be really cool at the time? But like, if beyond that, when I'm thinking about a character class, I often think about what, like, the communication of it. Like, what about this character class allows the character to communicate with the world and with the reader? So if you're a guy's isekai and he's a complete absolute meathead, then he would gain, if he gains a fighter class, then he's communicating who he is by way of his class. If somehow he gets stuck with a wizard class, but he goes full big bean, he's like, no. Like, the only spells I'm using are the spells that make really big fists that punch people. That also communicates who he is. And I think in terms of actual in the story itself, I tend to like two scenarios depending on for what kind of fantasy you're going for. If you're going for a fantasy of equality, then everyone gets the same classes. Like, all right, here's the tutorial, you got your 4, and then you explore from that base. Everyone has the same sort of opportunity, and then you, as the main character, get to explore by way of your choices who you are. The other way I tend to like is by way of achievement, where if you're going for a fantasy of, let's go for the most special guy in the world, the most powerful guy ever, then it's like, oh yeah, you unlocked the secret class that no one else got, the legendary Moonlight Sculptor, for example. And I find it's just so thrilling when they get that super secret prestige class or something like that. So, like, I think it's just two different scenarios. If you want to go for equality, then yeah, everyone gets the same thing. If you want to go for something special, but have it feel earned, then achievement's the way to go, in my opinion, at least. But I'm just some guy, so.
No, all of you guys are great people.
Yeah.
So
we're not just guys.
you're
Yeah.
great guys. There you go. All right, so we are coming up on about 7 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is give you guys about a minute or two to go through and give, do a wrap up of yourself. Tell people what the main class or what about your MC that you think that they should read your book for. Why not? Sounds good. I know we did it in the introduction, so I'll start with Jacob.
I feel like I've been talking about my books and my my characters already. Yeah, so I guess I'll just go through them again. My most recent series, Sam, or the most recent series is Second Chance Swordsman, and the character in that's Sam. He's a sort of berserker barbarian class, but I give him a cooler name than that. It's called Blood Knight. And actually, now that I'm remembering my own book and I'm a little more awake, actually he has a second class, so I do have a dual class in my books.
Yo.
But yeah, so that's pretty cool. So he's got like he's sort of got like a warlock class and a sort of berserker class. So the berserker class, he can like be dealing all this damage, creating blood everywhere, and then because he's got this warlock class, he can then just like summon blood magic all over the place and do crazy stuff. And if you ask me, it's pretty sick, and I think you should check it out. That's my newest series. And then Tower Climber, he's got he can steal abilities, and then in Arcane Kingdom Online, he's a mage, but then he becomes a bunch of other classes, and he can do everything. It was my first series. I don't like it as much as my other books, but I still like it.
Still read them.
Yeah.
And just as a note, Geneva will be posting the links for each of these authors, so please feel free to go check them out. Even just follow their Amazon author page. It really helps them, and keep an eye out for and get some of their releases. I'm going to go with JM.
Alrighty. So I'm JM, and again I write Mark of the Fool and co-write Runeseeker. Let's start off with Runeseeker, since that's brand spanking new. Why I think you should read it, even though again I'm just some guy trying to recommend a book, is that it's got, if you want unique classes, it's got them. If you want mystery, it's got it. If you want a setting that has flying islands, it's got it. And if you want people blowing up monsters with the power of the sun, then it's got that too. All of the magic and system in that is sun-based. So everyone's almost like a solar battery. It's kind of like this cool cross between some cultivation elements and the classical lit RPG system. And then for my other older series, which some of in the audience already know, it's Mark of the Fool. That one is a progression fantasy, which is all about the classic Chosen One trope. But when the gods choose Alex to be their chosen one, he straight up tells them, no, I'm going to do my own thing instead. And he runs off. He joins a wizard school, despite the fact that the power his god gave him stops him from doing spellcraft. And it's about him breaking his power, exploring the world, some slice of life, a lot of action, and plenty of fun to go around. There we go. That's me.
Okay. And David.
I mean, I've mentioned it before, but yeah, I write a series called Necrotic Apocalypse, which is a zombie apocalypse lit RPG. It's about a medieval peasant who is just a terrible guy. He's just, he's greedy, impulsive, arrogant, delusional. He's pretty much motivated by spite throughout the entire course of several books. But dies, becomes zombie, wakes up in modern day Seattle. Immediately kills 3 people, kind of by accident. And zombie apocalypse starts due to that. But it's a kind of wild series with very interesting, silly stories, I guess is what I would say. It's a very silly zombie book. And I also do the Pixel Dust series, which is, there's 3 books out for that. I haven't written a new one for a while. But I am working on book 4 of that. And that's also kind of the polar opposite, where you've got like one of the main characters of the healer, and deals with a whole party of people that are more traditional class-based things. But yeah, that's a very interesting take on kind of the VR system that might be out there. Yeah.
All right. And thank you guys for joining us today for the We All Chose the Same Class panel. If you guys had any more questions for these panelists, please drop them in the Discord channel. The Discord goes for everything. It's 24/7. If you guys want to hop in, there's voice channels, there's talk channels, text channels, everything like that. There is an after party. So I'm just going to do a quick reminder of everything that is going on today. Guildificon is going through till Thursday. So we still have 3 more days after this of panels and takeovers. So please support everyone. But for today, we have takeovers that are going to be happening. There's 4 more takeovers: Stuart Gross, Andrea Parsono, Michael Norris, and Troy Osgood. And then we also have 3 more panels as well that will be happening today. There'll be the Keep Moving Forward panel, the I'm Here But Not All There, which is about MC mental stability. And then the Sound Booth Theater Presents tonight. So again, there's takeovers. Please definitely support them on the Facebook page. There are panels that you'll be able to see, and definitely support and ask questions to everyone. And again, thank you guys for a great time. And now it's time to smile and wave goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.